and just try to hype up a game that's this bad and have everybody collectively talk about how great it is, and like fucking make all the viewers feel like they're in some kind of fucking like Twilight Zone fever dream, where everybody's talking about how fucking lit this game is, and every content creator is like, bro, this is gonna change the world.
For all their work, their YouTube channel in its 2 years of
happens.
existence has managed to gather about 500 subscribers. So what is the future of Dreamworld?
That's a
I don't think
lot,
there is
500.
one. These guys set out to make an ambitious game and failed. That in itself would have been acceptable if it weren't for the fact that they misled people, claiming they had years of experience in an industry that they didn't, in an effort to get their money, claiming that they had a solution to a problem that prevented games like this from existing in the first place when they didn't. Which begs the question, at which point do we call these things a con? At what point do they slide past ineptitude and into malicious intent?
I think it's very obvious what the difference is. So if you are misleading people knowingly, like for example, saying that you worked at Google or saying that you have 9 years of game design experience, I think that is very clearly misleading people. And also, to an extent, I think that gross negligence and gross mismanagement is the same as misleading people, and it should be treated the same. Because if you take people's money, at a certain point, it doesn't matter why it didn't work out, you still lost their money.
Let me know down in the comments below. These guys are $65,000 richer, and all it cost them was their entire reputation. Zachary Kaplan and Garrison Bellick left quite a trail of evidence on the internet at this point, telling the world exactly what type of people they
Just make a new name. Just invent a new name.
are. Thanks to YouTubers like Callum Upton and Kira TV, it's been incredibly well documented, and I think it's safe to say no one in their right mind would work with these guys or give them money in the future.
We'll see about that.
Next up, we have Identity. Identity is another game put on Kickstarter way back in 2015 that promised the moon. It was going to deliver not just any MMO experience, but the MMO experience, where you could do literally anything in a game full of other people doing literally anything they wanted. The world and its economy would be determined by the players playing the game. What did they need from the public? Just $150,000 to deliver an experience that AAA studios would spend hundreds of millions on. But this was 2015, before we'd seen a ton of scam Kickstarter projects materialize and fail to deliver. People's guards were down, and so they managed to collect 10 times their goal with over $1.5 million earned. How did they do this? Well, a handful of assets purchased from the Unreal Engine shop and placed into a world of course. We are
Leave your mark. Gain fame through your expressions. Wow. Gaming really is something nowadays, isn't it?
starting to see a trend here, aren't we? Pledgers were even able to spend $5,000 for packages that would allow them to go into the office and game with the development team. Except there wasn't one. There was no office.
Passport stamp, a unique backer hat, closed beta access, plus $15,000 of in-game cash, plus used motorcycle, plus sports car, plus semi-truck, plus penthouse apartment, plus a 5-car garage, closet stacked with a dozen random outfits, plus 60-minute video conference with John and the development team, plus design your own unique in-game t-shirt, plus invitation to visit the office and spend half the day gaming with the team.
And there was no development team, just two friends. The studio was only just created immediately prior to this Kickstarter by John Vanderswet. One of the consistent problems with all of these scams is the lies. Every development studio on this list has a habit of lying. These lies were a large part of why people were willing to give their money to these projects in the first place.
Yeah, of course.
It is these lies that should absolutely come back to haunt them in court, but for some reason never do. In the case of John Vanderswet, his lie was that he had invested lots of his own money in the game and that he just needed the last...
Well, it was a lot of his money because he had $100 and he invested like $50, so that's like half of his total net worth into this game. That's a lot of money. Yeah, $50, it's a lot of fucking money, man. He had $100, now he's only got 50 left. He spent half his money on this shit.
$150,000 to get it over the finish line. He even went as far as saying, should we meet our goal here in Kickstarter, we'll have everything we need to ensure that identity gets completed. As mentioned, the game received 10 times what he asked for. John received $1.5 million. So according to him, this was now a slam dunk. He needed $150,000 but received $1.5 million. The estimated delivery of this game, according to the Kickstarter page, December of 2016. The Kickstarter closed and they began accepting additional funding on their own personal website. Smart, it wasn't until 2016, the year the game was due to release, that people started becoming suspicious of the product.
You've got to remember, like 2015-16, this was in the dark ages of MMOs, where there were no good MMOs that had come out. Final Fantasy was still garbage. Warlords of Draenor was in full swing. Like every other MMO was dead, bad, or garbage. So like people were throwing their money at anything.
Project, noticing that outside of the initial video of some pre-made assets placed into Unreal Engine, the only thing the developers had produced for the public were some sketches and some conversations. Yet another thing this game has in common with the rest of the games on this list. With the beta supposedly just months away, the developers still had zero footage of the game to show to the backers. Heck, they couldn't even manage to share a screenshot. The developers explained that they were simply too busy to communicate with the public due to the fact that they were hard at work on the game. So they were claiming they didn't have time to do this.
Simply hitting the print screen button here will do the trick. The image is now on your clipboard, ready to paste into Paint or other imaging programs.
Yeah, but like, I mean, then they have to use it on another program and then name it and then put it on the website, and you have to talk to the website developer. The resolution is wrong. And so like you put all these things together and it's like, there's just no way we can get this out in time. Like there's no way.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's at this point that the people with a brain started to realize something was wrong, while the zealots without a brain attacked them for questioning their developers. This is the stage we see all too often in these publicly funded game development cycles. The first people to talk critically about the game and question how realistic its plans are crucified by those who have chosen to
Remember, this is what happened to me with New World, is I spoke out, and they hated me for it.
Believe in their new higher power without questioning it. A couple of months before the beta due date, they announced that something playable would be available in 2017. This was a delay, but not a massive one. They followed this announcement up with an actual video of gameplay, much to everyone's surprise.
Amazing.
The video received hundreds of thousands of views and was mostly well received by the audience. But now, with 2017 coming and going, despite the promise of a playable beta releasing that year, an announcement would come on November 3rd, 2017, stating that something playable would be released on March 21st, 2018. It wouldn't be the whole game, but rather just a small module, not the entire world that you could do anything you wanted, anywhere you wanted, but instead one small town square.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, you're not really going to get the thing that you were paying for, but like you will get something.
At this point, Asylum had raised over $800,000, over 5 times what it asked for. It was also behind schedule and proposing to deliver a small fraction of the game that was promised, but at least it was something tangible.
Oh, that's smart for them to put Lyric on the screen, since like Lyric plays a lot of games like this. So it's like, hopefully they're trying to bait his audience into watching it or to get him to look at it. That's smart.
Players would finally be able to boot up and play. On February 12th, 2018, they finally released a trailer with actual gameplay footage. Although this footage was incredibly underwhelming. As much as backers wanted to see this gameplay, they were ultimately disappointed with what they got. This game still looked like little more than some basic assets slapped into the Unreal Engine, something we're growing all too familiar with now. Backers had one thing to keep their hopes up: the playable beta was only weeks away.
Yeah.
That is until Asylum delayed it again, but this time only by a month, given players had waited.
I'm starting to see a trend here.
This long, 1 extra month was not a big deal.
Yeah, true.
Then days before the launch, they delayed it again, this time indefinitely. And why not? They had at this point made over $1 million by delivering absolutely nothing. Players still knew next to nothing about the game, something that seems to be quite key to getting thousands of people to part with millions of dollars. Tell them you're creating something amazing while also telling them nothing at all, and watch how easily...
Well, exactly, because the less that you tell people, the more that you can get out of them. Because everything in their mind is always going to be better than what the reality is.
a fool and his money are separated. On November 30th, 2018, the game would finally be playable on Steam, or at least the Town Square module, which is just a name for a handful of buildings slapped together around a few streets that players could walk around.
Wait, where's he going?
Players could no longer imagine what the game would be. Instead, they had to face what it actually was, an unplayable, unsalvageable mess. And so, with the illusion shattered, players would stop sending funding to the game. The game instantly received a mostly negative review on Steam, the worst that you could get. So where is Asylum Entertainment and its MMO 5 years later? Almost none of the bugs or problems that existed at launch have been fixed, but it gets better. It seems John Vanderswet, emboldened by successfully scamming his backers, couldn't help himself. In 2020, he would go on to explain that the studio needed more money to finish Identity.
That's smart.
The game that had basically seen no progress in almost 2 years since its release. He explained that another developer had asked
Well, because if you can get money for them once, at that point, the thing is, it's easier to get money from people multiple times because then they're invested into it, you know?
Asylum to be the publisher of their mobile game. Now, you might be wondering, why would any developer in their right mind go to this man to publish their game, given his 100% track record of failure in delivering games as a studio? Well, what he did not tell everyone is that the developer that approached him to publish their game was him. Yeah, he created a second studio to develop a mobile game while he was supposedly working on Identity. And
that's smart. This guy, let him cook. Smart
he
guy.
needed us to give him more money to fund this new game so that Identity would have the money it needed to finish. And he even created a brand new...
This is like, bro, can I borrow $5? No, I'll pay you back the $10 from last week tomorrow. But yeah, could I get $5 today? Because it's like, because then I gotta have like a fucking, like my money's tied up right now, but like tomorrow I'm gonna get paid, and like then I'll get you this $5. You know what? I'll just get you 20 back. All right. So like if I could just get $5.
Kickstarter campaign for the new mobile game called Furballs. This is perhaps the most infuriating part of people getting away with this. They dive right into it again. He claimed that none of the money from Identity went into the new mobile game and that he only worked on it on his free time while he wasn't working on Identity. Two things that are all but certainly a lie. Fortunately, this time the Kickstarter campaign would be a complete failure. People were not as easily fooled by John given the reputation that he had now rightfully earned for himself.
He should have just done it under a fake name. Why would he do it under the same name? That was stupid. He should have just invented a new person. Like, just have an AI create a new character, a new human being, and then just use that person and be like, that's me now. I'm now Bill. And Bill is just a lifelong MMORPG fan. He loves video games. He grew up playing Pac-Man, and now he's trying to make one of his own. He's got 15 years in the space, in the industry. He worked for Microsoft and, like, you know, Photoshop him next to Bill Gates and just fucking make an entirely new person.
Kira TV did some great research on John after the fact and discovered that he had consistently moved into a more expensive home despite John claiming that he lost money on the venture and had no other form of employment. One could theorize that a substantial amount of the money that was due to be invested into Identity actually was just used to buy John a nicer house. If that's the case, would anyone be surprised? Recently, Asylum put up a post a few months back at the end of 2022, reaffirming that the game is still the studio's main priority, though they are also working on other projects.
It's been a long time, far too long, since I gave you an update on Identity and its progress. When are we going to see a new update? That's a difficult one to answer, but I do hope fairly soon.
Projects now. Tragically, the game itself is still available on Steam for $30, though with the reviews...
We hit a bit of a vicious circle here, where in order to improve funding and development, we need to give you some awesome updates to build trust, but at the same time, we had to feed our families, and we couldn't do that without the funding. So we decided that we could start some smaller projects in-house to raise money for Identity, and that's actually going quite well. Yeah, it's going to be fine, guys.
That it's garnered, I doubt anyone is falling for it. After 8 years and $1.6 million raised, all John was able to produce was a few assets slapped into Unreal Engine in a completely unplayable state. Whether it was malicious intent or complete ignorance, I would never invest in John Vanderswet ever again. He's proven that he's willing to embellish on his experience as a developer and fail to reach unrealistic goals.
I've always said this, I'll say it again. If you're doing something and you can't make sure that you can enforce the contract, you need, like, the moment that anything, even the smallest detail is off, if they say to meet you at McDonald's and they're at the other Taco Bell, nope, I gotta go home. I gotta go. If you're buying it for $450 and they give you $440, nope. No, I gotta go, guys. I gotta go. Yeah, that's it. I'm done. Because anything, fucking anything like that, if a person is operating in good faith, they're not gonna lie to you at all.
While moving into a nice
smoke,
house and attempting to cash in on a mobile game that he developed while supposedly working on a game that people gave him $1.5 million to develop.
They're never getting that
John
money back.
Vanderswip has a new house, but he lost it.
All right, let's see. Yeah, let's watch some.
Oh yeah,
Diablo 4 videos.
New Diablo more. Bro, I need to stop calling Diablo 4 Diablo Immortal. I really need to stop doing that.
Diablo 4 just got some new quality of life updates as confirmed by Blizzard, plus a new interview with the devs reveals just how much story content we can expect post-launch. Plus, Diablo 4 lore book was just teased, revealing a horrifying new enemy we can expect to battle. Let's get into this. Here's the headline right here. It goes on to say this: Diablo 4 will receive new story content every 3 months. Expect quarterly updates for Blizzard.
See, this is the best thing, is that I hope that, I mean, obviously Lilith is really hot, but Lilith could also have a sister, and they could add Lilith's sister into the game in, like, the first expansion. So, like, every 3 months, there's a possibility that could happen.
Blizzard's upcoming ARPG, and it will bring new storylines associated with additional mechanics and game features. Not only is it going to be story stuff, but we're going to be getting something tied into the story that's revealing new game mechanics and features. Very interesting. So this comes from...
By the way, 3 months. 3 months for new story content? If this is going to be like a consistent thing, that's really fucking impressive. That's amazing. Oh, I don't... But I'll believe that when I see it. That is crazy good. Wow.
A brand new cover reveal from Game Informer, by the way. So this is very cool. It goes on to say this right here. Let me zoom it in. In Game Informer's latest cover story, Diablo 4 Associate Game Director Joe Pecora said that while he hesitates to use the word expansion, the game's post-launch quarterly updates will consist of additional story content that will be tied into the new game mechanics and features of each update. Now,
so they're basically doing what PoE does, where, like, obviously, you know, like, there have been, like, there's story, right? There's, like, Cirrus, and then you realize, like, we don't go to Oriath anymore. Well, you know, there's a reason for that.
It will additionally be accompanied by a new seasonal battle pass, which will come in both free and premium forms. Blizzard has previously confirmed that the game's first season will not go live with Diablo 4 and will come sometime later. So it's not going to be like the season is right out of the gates. We'll have to wait a little bit before that happens. Furthermore, it goes on to say
Again, you can also double dip with hype there. That's smart. And it also cuts away all of the people complaining about it being pay to win if there's no season start at the beginning. So who cares? So is there an update or DLC? Well, no, I think if they want to do an update for the game or like an expansion, I think that's fine. Just as long as it has like a lot of content, and if people like it, then they buy it, right? It's about that simple.
As in the cover story, Blizzard revealed 2 additional effects players will have to overcome Diablo 4's in-game nightmare dungeons. One such effect will see an invincible pillar of lightning constantly chasing players throughout the dungeon, while another will add a shade that follows players and, if touched, will obscure their vision and summon additional enemies. That one
I think that's super cringe. Like, one of the worst mechanics in Lost Ark is darkness. Like, every time that not being able to see what's happening on the screen is part of the challenge, I think that it's a bad challenge. I don't care if you can avoid it or not. I just think it sucks. Just try to do something else that's more interesting. Like, I don't like that mechanic. Straight up. I fucking hate mechanics where you can't see what's happening.
Actually sounds like a pain in the butt. We've seen stuff like that where you do like touch a enemy, an elite, and your vision is kind of obscured, and you know that you have been afflicted. So yeah, that's going to be a thing, and it seems like it's going to be a little bit more intense than what we've already experienced within the actual beta. Now, furthermore, it goes on to say this right here. Blizzard also shared a few new details about Hell Tides with Game Informer, clarifying that multiple areas in the world can be affected by Hell Tides at once. Deadlier enemies will spawn within a Hell Tides borders, of course, including remix versions of various bosses from
this sounds really cool.
Game. So that's cool, but I'm also, again, you know, kind of worried about the redundancy that could happen with various bosses appearing in Hell Tide.
Oh, I feel like it will probably be redundant. But how redundant it is kind of depends. Like, if it's something that happens every once in a while, it's fine. Like, having to go back and kill a world boss or something like that, or some empowered area, I think it's fine. It's just about, like, how much diversity is inside of the system and how much of it feels the same. But yeah, I think that's really cool, and I think that adding more world content is a good thing. Getting players to interact with each other in games, I think, is usually a positive.
As well as perhaps the dungeons, because we already know the bosses will most likely repeat in these 120 dungeons, and to have them spread out through Hell Tides, I hope they have some sort of different mechanics with them as well. But it is cool to note that Hell Tide events can be widespread all at once and be dropping in and out of the world. So I think that's a cool little detail right there. Now, also they did detail some UI improvements. So we're going to talk about this one from the most recent Wowhead interview. Check it out right here. UI improvements. Will the UI be updated with additional quality of life features before release? Now, I do actually have a further update in just...
I have to tell you guys, I think that the UI changes make it to where whenever you open UI, it doesn't show your flowers first. It shows your actual fucking stats. Change that. And remove the green arrow whenever you're comparing things that are not one-to-one. The green arrow should never
so
be
annoying.
Moment about this where they actually show off what they've done. I go on to say this. There are some points that can be addressed between beta and release. Joe Shelley said, UI will not dramatically change in that period of time simply because there's not enough time. Some
yeah,
issues
exactly. I really... Like, while the UI, I mean, it doesn't look super cool or anything like that, I actually think the UI is totally fine. I have no problems with the UI. I am very positive about the UI. There are a few things that I think are bad, but those few things I think that they will fix. I think that if Diablo Immortal didn't come out, people wouldn't have as much of a problem with the Diablo 4 UI. I think that the reason why a lot of people don't like it, and the comparisons that I see a lot, are people comparing it to Diablo Immortal's UI and saying these are the same, because Diablo Immortal is bad, then this game is bad. I think the UI is just simply a functional tool. So
just look at Diablo 2's, I say. Diablo's 2's, the remake.
I don't care about how many little fancy curly cues they have on the edge of the squares. If they want to fix it and make it a little bit better, make it more immersive, that's fine with me. I'm okay with it. But I just don't think this is a burning problem.
Like bugs need a faster transition, and others are more complex problems, Joe Shelley added. We want the UI to be accessible to all kinds of...
Somebody says in chat it's got too many mobile UI similarities, and that's why I think that these comments are just not worth taking seriously. It's got too many mobile UI similarities? What, like, that's a fucking problem? Why is that a problem to you? Like, why? It works. That's why all the games use it.
Players, there are a lot of factors we need to think about, and this was recently discovered as well, that they actually adjusted the socket size for inventory. So check it out right here. You can see to the left our brand new version where the socket size is actually bigger, and you can quickly identify it with your eyeballs, as opposed to the beta version where it was much smaller and you're trying to figure out Where in the world are the sockable items? But now that has been updated, and it's going to be a little bit of a quality of life adjustment that's definitely going to be improving the experience. That sort of thing that I think really does add up and matter. So I'm curious to see what else they're going to adjust in the future as well. Oh boy, check this out right here. Diablo 4 lore book reveals possible new foe with ties to an iconic boss. So yes,
I mean, it's got to be fucking Baal, right? Because that's Lilith's father.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
So I mean, I guess so, right?
lore book did reveal
I did not know that.
what is called
Mephisto.
the Maggot Queen. So yes, this is very much related to another enemy that was kind of shown up.
I thought since they were both pale, he was her dad. I guess I'm a racist.
In the Diablo 4
God.
trailers previously, as you can see right here. Looks pretty cool, looks pretty challenging, but what's the difference here between the two? So it goes on to say this right here. Zoom it in. The Maggot Queen's appearance is evocative of Durrell, the Lord of Pain. The Lesser Evil was the final boss of Act 2 in Diablo 2 and is also referred to as the Maggot King. Keen-eyed players that spotted him in the gameplay trailer and beta achievements know Durrell will be reappearing in Diablo 4. Given the similarities in their visual design and naming conventions, the Maggot Queen may be a powerful monster or even a mini-boss that players must contend with when battling Durrell's minions. So that makes sense. And this could actually be one of those bosses or sub-bosses that appear during Helltides that you might be facing off against on occasion as well, which would actually be really, really cool.
Yeah, I think that's badass. Just like more different types of bosses is great. I think that's one of the biggest criticisms. Like the bosses they have are, I think, pretty good. It's just that there aren't that many of them. Make more of them. Easy.
Now, if you're wanting to prep for the launch of Diablo 4, there is a really, really cool and useful build calculator tool. As you can see right here, yeah, this thing is really cool. So you can select your class, of course. There are your equipment pieces over here as well. They even have some of the aspects that you can expect that can, you know, modify your character. But yeah, you can really get in here.
I'm just going to build everything into Whirlwind. So, like, anything that doesn't make Whirlwind do more damage, we don't get it. And anything that does make Whirlwind do more damage, we do get it.
We do. Yep, that's true.
And that's how we're going to do it.
And plot and plan what type of build you want to
That's
go
simple.
for and fine-tune it as you go. So if you want to do like a bleed build, you can go all in for that for the Barbarian, for example, and choose whatever class like Rogue. So it's very cool, and I believe you can actually go in here and save it as well, and also search out the different skills and abilities that you want to learn about or go ahead and equip, and also share your builds with friends. So this is like one of the best tools I have seen pre-launch for any game. So be sure to check it out. They continue to improve it. So yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on what actually happens with that one as well. Yeah, now it's time to go over your top comments. Remember, leave a comment down below. It can end up in a...
I feel like a lot of those things are really big. Like, all this is huge. I'm glad you
Yeah,
all
good
this,
changes.
like, a 3-month content cycle is fucking nuts.
That is really fast.
That's really, really good. I didn't expect that.
future video. So the question is this: what was my most recent video about? So let's dive into that.
That is a chip
Alright, so
tab.
here we go. It says,
Zach,
where
right,
Jeff
it's
just
huge.
said, what official
I don't
new
know if I saw
updates?
that.
Chat is outrageous.
Check it
man.
out. If you missed it, some new in-game details there, new improvements,
So
and all
Pee-wee do
sorts
the
of cool
same?
stuff right there on the channel now.
not new
Anthony
story
goes on to
stuff.
say this about the video. I love how it's not all instant gratification and requires time, work, and even research. I myself more immersed in games this way. It seems very well made thus far. Very excited for the release.
I'm very much in favor of having to work for something. The only thing is that I don't like working backwards. Like, I don't like if you make a mistake in the game, you can't undo the mistake. It's one of my biggest criticisms for PoE, is how many things that you are tied to that you Like, you don't have the capacity to be able to, like, fully calculate the effectiveness of as a person who is new. You're baited into fucking up. Yeah, exactly. Letting people change things and do things differently is great. I hope they have more of that.
Yeah, the payoff can be very big once you find a really, really good build, of course. Now, Mike B says this, love the format of your videos. You're my favorite Diablo 4 news source so far. Keep it up. I'm doing my best, man. I'm going to be hunting down that news for you all, and any updates that come from Blizzard, I have you guys covered. Now, JBCKLC says this, what would be great is an in-game reward to respec, which can be obtained doing a quest line or even the main story quest. I believe that's what he says here.
I think that the player base should not compromise on this at all. I think that you should be able to respec for free at all times. With no restrictions. It works for WoW. WoW's fine. It worked for Diablo 3. That has nothing to do with why Diablo 3 was bad. There is no reason why not. If they want to add like a very small gold fee to like slightly combat inflation, I'm not going to like freak out about this. But, and like that's a realistic perspective. But I don't want to have anything in my way.
That's kind of what already happens,
I want
I
to
think,
change my build or do something different because I'm bored of what I'm doing. It's literally that simple. Like if I'm bored, I want to play another character. I don't want to have to do something I don't want to do. It's a video game. Why should I have to do something I don't want to do? That's weird. Like, yeah, I don't get it. Shouldn't be a bummer to try a new build. Yeah, exactly. You should have to remake. That's how it goes for us boomers, bro. Yeah, bro. Like, then stay in Diablo 2. That's what I think. Gold inflation won't matter at 3-month seasons. Yeah, I agree. And Diablo's a game where you get gold in billions, though. Yeah, there you go. Get ready to respec for each trash pull, then. But you're not gonna do that, though. Like I don't do that in WoW. Like, I don't want to respec for every trash. Like, bro, like, here's why you're not gonna respec for every trash pull. It's because you're constantly fighting with efficiency. Diablo is a game that's built around efficiency. And if you're always respecking back and forth, you're not being efficient. So that's why it won't matter. Make it so you have to respec back in town? Yeah. It's so easy.
This would allow players to feel like they have some wiggle room after making it to the end game and find their current build just isn't cutting it. I love the idea of having an item that enables you to perhaps respec, and it's kind of maybe considered rare, and you get like that free chance to respec. Then on, it might be more costly, because I know a lot of you guys actually might want it to be costly to respec. Let me know if I'm wrong about that, by the way. Because you want your build to matter. You want
your build doesn't matter unless you can't respec? What kind of a fucking moron thinks like that?
Yeah, that doesn't make very much sense.
That's so stupid.
Your character to feel like this is a personality. I spent my time building this character. Yeah, it might not be perfect, but this is the character I set.
Bro, the people that talk like this, I guarantee you, they're so dumb, because that's not how the game works. You have
like shit changes constantly.
You have to redo. You have your plugins for the Paragon board.
So you should be changing your shit all the time.
You have your legendaries. You have your gear sets. That your gear sets empower certain abilities. Well, if you change all your fucking abilities, you're gonna have to get new gear. It's like you don't even play the fucking game. Drives me crazy. Yeah, it's like if I have gear for a whirlwind build and I'm like, oh, I don't like this anymore. I want to play upheaval. Okay, go ahead. But all of my gear is whirlwind buffs, so you're gonna have a problem. You've got to refarm the gear. It's such a stupid perspective to have. I don't understand it.
Or if this is the story arc of this certain class that I have created. I think that's pretty cool. On the flip side of it,
silly.
you know, respecting I found to be extremely important in the beta. So, of course, if the final version of the game is anything like the beta, which I'm assuming it will be, I think a lot of you guys are going to want to be able to respec in the in-game.
Exactly.
Especially. Now, Silver Streak says this. The constant complaints about the character creator boggled my mind. Diablo 4 has the best character creator of any ARPG of its style worth naming.
Diablo Immortal is better.
Yeah, it's way better.
And it is not just slightly better.
But that's just because it's literally just Diablo 3.
Most of them don't even let you choose the gender of your character or class. That's right.
That's true.
Usually they have a set character, and guess what? Too bad, you go for it. So, yeah, I think the character creator is great, but it's also cool to hear that...
Was it? Yes, it was. It absolutely was. And again, the character fidelity and the model fidelity is much higher in Diablo 4 than it is in Diablo Immortal. True. However, the amount of ways that you can customize your character's appearance, there are way more of them in Diablo Immortal than there are in Diablo 4.
Yeah, Blizzard is in fact willing to buff the character creator after launch.
Yeah,
that's
I hope
the plan. They plan to add more stuff to the character creator to make it even more fleshed out and detailed. So I'm actually looking forward to that.
Less
but
customization.
at the same time, it might be pointless because I like to armor up and see all my armor. But there is that transmog system. You have to remember the transmog system.
I didn't do any of that. I heard it was really good.
So if you don't like to be more armored up and you want to be like a necromancer that is, you know, kind of all skinny and emo and has no chest piece.
I am also of the mindset that I think that classes should, like, the physique of the characters should mirror the class. I don't want to see a skinny barbarian, okay? No. I don't want to see a fat necromancer.
On or whatever and showing off his tattoos and that sort of thing. That's where the character creator does actually matter. And, yeah. So we'll see if they throw those character creator options into the battle pass eventually, if that's what they're talking about, or if they're just going to put it right in there at the base of the character creator. But anyway, there it is. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more Diablo 4 updates and, of course, open world gaming goodness. I hope to do some other cool videos beyond Diablo, so look out for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Take care.
I think these videos are great. I really do. I love them. So this is a great video. I didn't even
Diablo
know
4
about this new thing with the Hell Tides, and especially with the 3-month cycle is what was so fucking crazy. That's impressive. I'm going to link you guys this video. Make sure to give it a like. These are fucking great. Holy shit. But imagine skinny druid, then the 17 damage would at least be real. Yeah.
I've been wanting to watch this.
The fluffy, peaceful Gobbos have been kidnapped and imprisoned by the evil Baron Dante. The lands are in chaos and there's only one hero brave enough and green enough to save them. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Drive Hayes. Today we're going back to 1997, strapping our backpack on and adventuring through the lush grassland, dark dank caves, dry deserts and frozen tundras before ascending Baron Dante's castle and saving the Gobbo King. Then I'll be showing you all the hidden levels, collecting all the jigsaw pieces and testing my skill against the hidden boss before asking the simple question, Croc, Legend of the Gobbos, was it any good? As usual, a massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel alive. More information on how you can support
that's a lot.
For now, let's begin. Croc actually came on the same demo disc as Armored Core, Sampler Disc 4, and as we'll see later, there's a very strange connection between Croc and Otherland, one of the strangest MMORPGs I've ever played. We'll be looking at the connections to Rayman, Tomb Raider, Mario, Sonic, Pandemonium and Banjo-Kazooie because Croc is truly a melting pot of ideas. Originally developed as a Yoshi racing game for Nintendo, that idea was ultimately scrapped, but the engine and assets were kept and repurposed into one of the PlayStation 1's most successful platforms. Croc actually sits as the 31st best-selling PlayStation 1 game at just over 3 million copies. Croc was originally released for the PlayStation PlayStation 1 and PC. In this video, I'll be playing the PlayStation 1 version. Now, this video is not sponsored, but I do think it's important that you know Croc is now considered abandonware and can be downloaded for free from My Abandonware. Interesting fact, Croc was made in the B-Render engine, or Blazing Renderer, the same engine responsible for Carmageddon, Carmageddon 2, Sensible Soccer 98, and Microsoft 3D Movie Maker. And on May the 3rd, it was tweeted out that the B-Render engine was going open source. You can download it and have a play around right now. Now, Croc has two very deep personal connections to me. The first, I had this game as a kid, and I played it to death. I loved it, so I know I'm coming at this with a heavy nostalgic bias. But I'm going to do my best to push that aside and judge it purely from what it is, not what it means to me. The second connection, Croc's level designer is Nick Cusworth. Now, regular viewers of my other MMORPG-focused channel may remember my 10-part playthrough of the insane MMO Otherland, the 100-hour journey to finish one of the strangest and most fascinating MMOs I'd ever discovered. Nick Cusworth was the lead game designer on Otherland, and he did an absolutely incredible job on that. So let's see how Croc's level design holds up. The game starts with the Argonaut logo being inflated by these cute little creatures. These are gobos, and such a simple thing sets the tone quite nicely.
So many
Cheeky,
years.
silly, and a little bit dumb. And then we get the intro movie.
Oh my god, dude. Holy shit. Oh my god, I forgot they find him.
No dialogue means relying on visual storytelling. In fact, the lack of text tutorials or dialogue at all means you can port the game to any country and it will still make sense. It's a skill to tell a story with no dialogue and a greater game design challenge to teach a player controls and mechanics with no tutorial text. Our story starts with Croc, a baby crocodile found in a floating basket and raised by the king of the Gobos to become the defender of the Gobbo village. And then the evil Baron Dante shows up and kidnaps the king. With the king's final act, he magics Croc away to safety. So now Croc begins his quest to defeat the evil Baron Dante and save his adopted father, the king. We are thrown to the menu and get one of the most memorable bits, the music.
So good, man.
The music in Croc was composed by Justin Charvona, who previously worked on the Lemmings soundtrack, and would go on to work on Croc 2, Alien Resurrection the game, and Bionicle the game. For Croc, Justin went with jazz, funk, and general grooviness. It's catchy, it's fun, and you'll find yourself humming the main theme for years after you finish the game. The game itself is divided into 5 worlds with up to 8 levels on each world, 6 platforming levels and 2 bosses. The level notation is 1-1, reminiscent of the Mario games World and then Stage, and links back to its origins as a Yoshi game. The controls are relatively simple, forward, backward, left and right, but tank controls left and right, turning Tomb Raider style. L1 and R1 strafe very slowly, X jumps in the air, and pressing X while you're in the air makes you stomp down. You can break boxes and kill enemies by stomping on them. Square is your tail whip attack, similar to Crash Bandicoot's signature spin, and holding triangle lets you manually look around and admire the view. Circle does a quick 180 spin around. You can do this while on the floor or in the air to get around quicker, and that's pretty much it. The controls are very basic, but we'll see the game does introduce new mechanics consistently. The pacing of increasing the platforming complexity and mechanical challenge is very nice. Each level is broken into smaller sections, rooms if you will, and transitions between these sections vary from simply walking through a door to a more complex stamping on a wooden board and falling into the well.
I thought it was so cool you could fall through the well.
Felled trees, but once you're underground, you've got obsidian caves and lava flows, complete with moving platforms, and some platforms which shake and then crumble away. Around the level, you'll see gems. These work like the rings in Sonic. Collect 100 of these to gain an extra life. If you take damage while carrying any number of gems, they will fly out of you and begin to disappear. You can collect them quickly before they do. As long as you have 1 gem, you effectively have a shield. Get hit with no gems on you and you will die, lose a life and have to restart the level. If you lose all your lives, you have to restart the game. And the hitboxes in this game are awful. It's extremely hard to tell when you are too close to an enemy, so you will die a lot. Some gems, however, are special. Each level has 5 hidden coloured gems. Finding them all unlocks the hidden bonus gem door at the end of that level. In the first few levels, this is really easy, because the coloured gems are coloured while floating in the world. You can see the red or the green or the blue. But about halfway into the game, the special coloured gems change to look exactly like the normal gems in the overworld, meaning you have to collect every gem you see because you don't know if it's a special gem until you get it. Around every level, you'll also find 6 hidden gobbos. These can be inside cages, boxes, or just in hard-to-reach places. Rescuing all 6 will be needed for the final hidden boss ending. And here's something that scared the hell out of me as a kid. Some of the wells are guarded by giant pink worms. It's so unexpected. They'll lunge at you, run around and you can dodge them pretty easily, and then you can jump down the well after them, sometimes finding a hidden area. Along with running and jumping, there's also a very basic hanging system. If you just about grab the edge of a box, you can pull yourself up, but there's no sideways shimmy here, which is a shame because Tomb Raider 1 had a sideways shimmy system and released 1 year before Croc. So now we've covered all the basics: run, jump, climb, tail, smash boxes, collect gems and find gobbos. Let's get pedantic. Many people say Croc was awkward to control, and I can understand that tank controls aren't the smoothest to play a platforming game with, but I think I've found the exact reason people find Croc difficult. While on the floor, left and right on the D-pad will turn you, and L1 and R1 will strafe you relative to the camera. However, in the air, this is reversed. If you jump while in the air, pressing left and right doesn't turn you anymore. It shifts you to the left or the right with the camera locked behind you, and L1 and R1 now turn. It's essentially switching the function of the left and right buttons and the L1 and R1 buttons while in the air. This means if you're running along turning right and jump, while you'd expect to keep turning while in the air to create a smooth curve for the jump, instead you now just shift. You may have calculated the path of the jump based off the idea you'd continue in a smooth curve, and now you're strafing in mid-air. It's jarring, and when you land, it's back to normal. When you do reach the end of the level, you've got 2 choices.
That's fucking weird.
The gong, or if you found all 5 special gems, go through the gem door. Gem doors are usually extra challenges which reward lives and gobbos, or introduce new mechanics, like the bouncy jelly. Stamp on it for a higher bounce, or the balloon transport. Grab the string and you'll be flown across the gaps. Some gobbos are trapped in cages. You either need to press a button to remove them or find a silver key and then run into the cage. When you do finish a level, you'll get a quick recap, but in an interesting touch, your collected gems are now stored, and when you finish the next level, those gems get stored as well. And every time you reach 100 in your total stored, you'll get an extra life, so gems stack between levels in your storage. Within the first few levels of the first island, you can very clearly see the multiple inspirations for Croc. The origins of being a Mario game, a kidnapped royal family member, the naming conventions of levels being world-stage, Croc himself likely being born from Yoshi, the backpack of Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, the tank controls, running, jumping, swimming, swinging, the level selection map screen and tailspin attack of Crash Bandicoot, press square to spin, find the hidden coloured gems in a level to unlock a hidden path. The gems acting as the rings from Sonic, taking damage and spilling them all around, pick them up before they fade. The gobbos being cute and trapped in cages like the Electoons from Rayman, having 6 hidden in every level and needing to find all of them to unlock the true hidden boss. But probably the most direct comparison platformer to platformer, and likely the reason Croc never quite rose to superstardom despite selling well, was Mario 64, which actually released 1 year before Croc. The N64 had the analog stick for fluid 3D movement, a complex triple jump mechanic, an open hub zone to act as the map, freedom of choice in the level order, and much bigger environments. Even the Croc 1 review from IGN back in 1997 opens with the line, It has been said that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. If this is the case, then Croc should make Mario 64 blush deeper shades of red than have ever been seen before. Croc isn't a bad gameplay experience by any means, but it is a very obvious amalgamation of other games. Inspiration has been taken from what's worked before, and it's been smashed together and produced something decent but not groundbreaking. It's a platformer imitating other, better platformers. In 1997, the home console wars were well underway, and the PlayStation versus N64 debate was strong. When PlayStation fans pointed to Croc, all the N64 fans had to do was point to Mario 64, and no one could deny the N64 fans had the better game. Indeed, the same IGN review ends with, Croc is definitely a good, slick platform game, but it is highly derivative of other titles. If you're a relative newcomer to this sort of game, you'll definitely enjoy it. If you're a seasoned gamer, look elsewhere. But I wanted to be fair to Croc, so let's go level by level and discuss the good and the bad, because there are some design choices I really admire, like the opening of level 1-2. You can see some gems floating on the wall above you, but that's the edge of the level, right? You should be able to get there. Well, you can climb up and run around. This is a great touch. Platformer games need a way to hem the player in, and by letting the player explore on what they believe to be the top of the level, you're removing that feeling of boundary. Croc's levels aren't big, but they do feel open because there's a sense of depth
then there's that thing up there
toward the skybox. In these caves, the smashable boxes are cleverly woven into the platforming itself. Your first instinct is to smash a box, but you need to climb over them to reach the higher areas first, and this is a puzzle choice we'll see done repeatedly. Sometimes you have to backtrack through levels, finding a key toward the end and remembering the cage at the start, and they're always optional. It's never anything complex, but it does add a little variety. It's not always forward progression. If you do finish a level and miss a gem or a gobbo, you need to replay it, but thankfully each level only takes about 4 or 5 minutes. They are extremely short. 1-3 starts with a nice touch which will come to haunt your playthroughs. If you turn around and look behind you, you'll find some boxes. So the player now knows, look behind you at the start of a level. Unfortunately, this is one of the only levels you actually have to do this on. And it's the third level in the game, meaning you are going to be turning around at the start of every single level for the rest of the game. Teaching the player to do something early on is fine. Tomb Raider 1 has the very first secret hidden at the start of the first level, encouraging you to seek out secrets. But when you encourage the player to act or play in a certain way, you need to then make sure you have rewards set up throughout your game periodically for that behaviour. If you have the player turn around at the start of a level, make it relevant to do in the future levels as well. More platforming stuff, moving switches, stand on the button to move, and this is actually the first time we pass through a coloured gem disguised as a normal gem. It's unavoidable, so the player cannot miss this secret. You are always exposed to the fact coloured gems are now hidden. This is a good use of railroading to introduce a new mechanic. Along with the hidden gems unlocking the gem door, you'll sometimes find super secret hidden sparkles, and these will whisk you away to hidden parts of the level and usually reward you with a load of lives, big red floating hearts. The game showers you with lives early on, which is good because the difficulty spike in the final 2 levels is brutal. Jumping down this well gets us to a strange minigame. It's the classic cup and ball routine, except with 3 boxes and 1 gobbo. What makes this difficult is you only get 1 chance. If you choose the wrong box, you have to replay the entire level to try again, and this is the design we'll see used repeatedly in Croc, putting a challenge in the middle or at the end of a level and making the player replay the entire level to have another go at it. Now we get push blocks, move them around within the limitation of the purple floor. Push block puzzles are insultingly easy. I know this is a kid's game, but every single block puzzle is just push the block a few spaces forward, jump on it, win. Another mechanic we'll see used as a crutch later. Sometimes you'll find golden keys and they unlock golden locks on doors. Now you'll usually always find golden keys in your regular level route, so it's not really a case of finding a key and backtracking, it's a case of here's a key, here's the door, keep going. The first use of the ladder of boxes level design. Run to the top, smash the top one, repeat. Another design choice we will see used many times. I've realised by now that Croc uses a select few designs repeatedly. The button minigame, the box ladder, the key then door, pushing a block one space and then jumping on it in many of the levels. And this has pros and cons. It's good that the levels themselves contain varied mechanics, but the variation very quickly becomes stale and causes all of the mid-game levels to blend into one big feeling level. The worlds don't feel different. Aesthetically they look different, but mechanically they play the same. And the levels within the worlds themselves don't feel unique. They all feel like a remix of the same 6 or 7 mechanics. The only exception being the final castle island, which pulled out all the stops and shows what Croc can really be. We'll get to that world eventually. Hiding the key behind the exit gong, you sneaky game. I like it. Another gem minigame. Splat the sheep. Why? This is also the first experience of the 3-button game, forwards, left and right. Jump on the button to do a thing. And I think it's probably this button game that was responsible for the switch in movement from the ground to the air. While in the air, pressing left and right to move from button to button is actually quite easy. Unfortunately, the game itself is just not that engaging. I think Croc's designers knew they had limited resources to work with, and they knew the 3-button game was going to be a crutch. Now the first mini-boss. A little cinematic shows Baron Dante using his evil magic to turn this bird into a boxer, and we have to set off to fight it. Boss levels all start with smaller platforming sections leading to the fight. Another mechanic. This platform, which looks like the Chaos Undivided symbol, stand on it and it moves. Turning now turns the platform. And while I like the idea of the platform itself and can see its possible use in a bigger puzzle, its use here highlights another major design issue. Every puzzle in Croc is self-contained. In this room, you do this, move on. In another room, you do this, move on. Every puzzle is a small combination of a few mechanics, but has no real impact on the level as a whole. You could rearrange the individual levels within a world, or even individual rooms within a level. You could mix and match between transitions, and you wouldn't actually lose anything. It feels very fragmented, like there's no cohesion between the loading screens. The rooms themselves don't need to be in this order. The levels don't need to be progressed in this order. It's almost like they designed a puzzle and then just slapped it down, without thinking of its greater impact in a greater puzzle. On to the first boss, and there's no way to avoid this. The bosses are bad. There's one mini-boss and one main boss per world, and then the final hidden 9th boss. The process for beating all of them is almost identical. Hit them 3 times. Each boss is only vulnerable after they do a move to attack you. The only change in mechanic is baiting them into doing their move. This boxer dude punches, then gets tired. Tail whip him when he's tired. But there is challenge to the fight, just not from the intended mechanics. It's from the atrocious hitboxes. If you get a little too close and you are not locked into your tail whip animation, you are vulnerable, so you will die. But you have no idea how close is too close because the hitbox of the enemy isn't mapped to its model. It extends into the general area around the model. So the majority of your deaths in Croc will not feel like your fault. It will feel like the game has suddenly decided, oh, you die now. Beating a boss always shows them reverting back to their normal mode, and then the magical bird comes and whisks you away to the next island. In 1-5, there's an enemy flying around a platform I need to get to, so I kill it. But by the time I press a button and get back to the platform, the enemy has respawned, which is a nice touch. Enemies do not stay dead for long. They respawn quite quickly, because defeating the enemy is part of the puzzle and is designed to be done within the process of the puzzle, not done ahead of time. They've managed to make sure combat is integrated into the flow of your movement through the level. You need to attack while jumping after having pressed the button. This is the process they developed, and this is what you have to do. This is nice. I now accidentally break a box and think, I needed that to jump on. So I quit the game and go to restart, and I learn a valuable lesson. Croc does not have an autosave. It needs you to manually save after each level, or write down the password. And this brings me to my problem with Croc's password system. Passwords in Croc are input using the directional buttons on the PlayStation D-pad, up, down, left and right. If you saw this symbol, which direction do you think this means? I mean, it's pointing to the right. So many people would assume it means right, but wrong. That's left. The PlayStation directional pad looks like this. So instead of using arrows to represent the directions in Croc's passwords, they've used the exact button shape from the controller itself. Now this shape looks fine on the controller because all 4 buttons are converging in the middle of a circle, but taken out of context looks like it's pointing in the opposite direction. And given how a password in Croc PlayStation 1 looks like this, you can see it's not the most visually pleasing, user-friendly password system. Eventually the game does start to show glimpses of what it can be once it stops copying and starts pushing its own boundaries. This fireball room. Run forward, hit switch, spin around, climb up. Croc doesn't have the smooth or free-form flow of Mario, but it does have tight enough controls that when it starts making the platforming difficult with timing and precision jumps, it does become a lot more fun. 1-6 adds in metal grills. You can swing under these, just jump at the right time and you'll grab on. Now you can't attack while swinging and the camera will sway quite heavily as you move. In later levels you'll end up swinging under and then jumping on and backtracking over these, which leads to quite nice, densely packed platforming puzzles. Chase the boss, another mechanic used about once every world. It'll run directly away from you, so you can make it bounce off a wall and then jump on top of it. A nice little distraction, but again, a completely isolated mechanic from the rest of the level. There's never a moment where chasing a box is part of a larger, more elaborate puzzle. The individual design elements feel so fragmented. It's got moments of decent design, like these moving platforms you need to time your jumps across, like a backward moving log conveyor belt. It's just a shame that Croc's mechanics all exist in walled-off sections of the level, and one mechanic very rarely benefits from the existence of another. Imagine this log platform bit leading to a spiral of crumbling platforms which lead to a platform above with a moving box on it, but parts of the floor fall away and you need to make the floor fall and then force the box to drop through the hole you've created so you could push it onto a lava river and jump across. Croc doesn't suffer from a lack of platforming ideas, it suffers from a lack of combining these ideas into a more complete, complex experience. And now the swimming bit. You've had lava, so you know jumping into strange liquids is bad, but water is fine, but only light blue water. Dark blue water still kills you. The swimming in Croc is again quite awkward. Pressing X repeatedly swims forward fast, holding X paddles at a slower pace, and turning now works in 3D, but there's a delay and then a huge oversteer. Pressing left to turn does a very little left shift to the Croc model at first, and then adds a large swing of movement. It feels sluggish, and underwater combat is even more so. Square now attacks straight forward, but the hitbox issue continues. How close can you get to an enemy before needing to attack? Because some enemies have a ranged attack, and if you attack too early, you're left in the attack recovery animation and you are vulnerable in this phase. World 1 boss time. But before that, stamp on this stone to find a hidden section, an absolute gauntlet of wells, worms and hearts. So I load up on lives and go and take on the boss, a giant boxing ladybird. Bait it into a punch, tail whip it so it falls down, then stamp on its stomach. Repeat 3 times and win. On to World 2, the Land of Ice. An ice level in a 90s platform game of course means slippery surfaces, slow acceleration and then no friction, and now a nice exploration of the hanging mechanic. Some enemies walk on top of the grills and then stamp down. If you're under them when they stamp, you'll be knocked loose. Unfortunately, there's no real way to know the range of the knock loose effect from the enemy, so you just need to time your movement to swing under a stamp. Nice touch. Combat is now getting a bit more risky. Enemies charge towards you, and if you miss a tail whip or mistime a slam attack, which is easy to do because ranges and hitboxes aren't obvious, you'll be hit while still recovering. Now the ice does make platforming more difficult, but unlike Rayman, the slippy low friction movement on ice does not continue into the air. In fact, if you jump, you'll immediately regain full control, so jumping across ice is a good way to not slide around. World 2 Stage 2. Level name, Be Wheelie Careful. Named because of the big wheels you have to jump across, and while this level name does make sense, most of them don't. Every level in Croc is named, and most of them are puns. I snow him so well. License to chill. Lights camel action. Life's a beach. And some are just descriptions of the mechanics you're about to face. Mud Pit Mania having a lot of mud pits. Leap of Faith being mostly a jumping level. By now, the secret gem doors are substantially harder to access. You'll find the end of the level gong and then think, nope, I'm not done yet. Getting all the coloured gems isn't hard, so you do feel inclined to see what the secret actually is. Like this move the cauldron back and forth to catch falling gems minigame. Oh, if you miss one gem, you fail and you have to restart the whole level to get another chance. Which I think honestly is just artificial padding of the difficulty of this specific minigame. catch all the gems, and get the last gobbo. World 2-3 is probably one of the best designed parts. It's a loop level. You need keys, buttons and boxes, but only by running around the whole level twice do you unlock everything needed to actually advance. They did a lot with a limited space. It also shows you how gems softly sink underwater, which shows they did think about underwater physics, which means it's a shame they never used that in a puzzle context, like pushing a box onto a switch underwater. This is when we reach this small but densely packed gauntlet of mechanics, moving platforms, jumps, enemies. This is probably the moment Croc starts to break away from its derivative nature and becomes more its own thing. It can be a densely packed platform puzzler with multiple mechanics all relying on each other when it tries to. The issue is it just doesn't try all that often. And again, if you think I'm being harsh or unfair to an old game by judging it from today's standards, remember Croc came out 1 year after Mario 64, 1 year after Crash Bandicoot, 2 years after Rayman, the same year as Tomb Raider 2. Even comparing it to its contemporaries at the time, Croc's platforming mechanics left a lot to be desired. But you do have some nice touches, like how on the cold levels, Croc shivers if you don't move. It's a nice idle animation, but again, I'm thinking, is this a Croc-specific design? Or
I feel like for an introduction to the game, this to game like a platforming game, this was great for me.
Penguin attack team, and then I notice a strange thing. Something I never quite noticed as a kid, but as an adult, it makes no sense. Look at the skybox. Why does the distant skybox have the silhouette of medieval fantasy castles, towers and turrets? That doesn't fit the aesthetic of an ice level at all. I'd expect ice drifts or glaciers, maybe an igloo, snowflake motifs. But look, it's giant mushrooms, smooth shapes which look like plants, flora and fauna, Stonehenge, pointed spires and castle drawbridges. Why is a fantasy magical aesthetic skybox being used for an ice level where you never encounter any of these things? And this made me question, is Croc simply the best use of a collection of assets that they already had? Did they already have this skybox and just decide it'll do? I can't see anyone designing a skybox for an ice level and going with this theme out of choice. It feels like they just already had access to this and made the best of it. And the more I think about this, the more it makes sense, because Croc started as a Yoshi game, and this skybox, despite being used in the ice level, is quite literally a mushroom kingdom. The ice mini-boss is some guy with a jetpack. Wait for him to fall to the floor, tail whip him 3 times, done. The start of 2-4 is nice. You get presented with this lovely view of various mechanics and you instantly begin planning a route, and now you're timing jumps onto platforms, shooting up and hopping through a tunnel filled with unstable platforms, and this does highlight a strength of Croc. The camera is quite good. It's almost always where it needs to be, directly behind when you are moving and swinging round in tight spaces to help line jumps up. The advantage to being a linear game is they can design the camera to drift into a soft-locked, helpful position for set-piece design. This soft lock actually happens in boss levels too. Normally the camera is behind Croc, but in a boss level it's gently pulled to either side to keep the boss in frame even if you are running sideways, because they know seeing the boss is more important than having a camera directly behind you in this situation. That's a really nice mechanical touch. Having the camera act differently at different parts of the game is a risky move because players value consistency, but altering the camera's behaviour very slightly to enhance the player's experience of a given moment is a nice thing to do. These platforms with arrows pointing down drop after being stood on, and I have to ask, what's the difference compared to a crumbling platform? Both of them drop you down after the same amount of time. Both of them respawn. This is a mechanically identical reskin of a platform type we already have. World 2-6, a larger version of the backward moving platform treadmill. I jump, miss, and fall to my death, but I spot a strange looking platform below. So I time a risky jump, land it just, and get whisked away to another secret. I have to say they have really hidden these secret platforms remarkably well. If you didn't backtrack or fail that jump, you wouldn't see this. Another 3-button minigame, Pop the Penguins, same as the sheep one from earlier. World 2 boss level, and oh okay, now we start to play around with the ambient lighting. I like this. The shading on Croc's character model is lovely and the light source is nicely respected. And the use of flying enemies, hazards and buttons within a low light environment adds a whole new dimension. Now don't get me wrong, I like this level, but I'm reminded of the low light level from Rayman and the low light level from Crash Bandicoot. And it's this constant comparison which is hurting my experience with Croc, because in Crash and Rayman the lack of light makes sense given the context of the level. In Crash you're sneaking through an unexplored part of Cortex's castle, and in Rayman you're in a cave. But in Croc, it almost feels as if they've decided, right, now it's the low light level, with no real reason for it being a low light level. If Croc was the first platform game you ever played, I can imagine you would absolutely love it and think it was groundbreaking, doing all these super smart things.
Yeah,
if
for
you
sure.
It after playing the games it's inspired
For sure,
by,
especially as a
you
little
feel
kid.
like you're watching a clip show. A greatest hits of mechanics out of context. Croc is not a bad game, but I don't feel it does anything uniquely Croc. There's nothing I can point to and say, that's what makes Croc Croc.
Right.
That's what Croc does better than anything else. That's what Croc did that moved the gaming landscape forward, because honestly, it doesn't. It's a decently fun, competently made collection of mechanics heavily inspired by things other games have already done. Next boss, a Yeti, created from 4 sheep moulded together by Baron Dante, so when you attack one it splits into 2 smaller enemies and then finally 4 even smaller ones. Tail whip them each to finish them off. Off to the desert. I do appreciate the small graphical flourishes, like the edging of the question mark boxes and the runic inscriptions on the frame of the area transition doors, or the tar pits having angled, slippy edges so floors are now a bit more hazardous. This level nicely combines 2 mechanics, bouncing jelly and long jumps. You need to run, jump and bounce off the jelly to make it. Now that is a lovely example of taking 2 simple mechanics and combining them together to make a different, more engaging experience. Yes, the traditional desert elephant. This marks one of Croc's strangest bits. Standing on the elephant makes it dart around this mud pool and you jump off in the corners to reach the boxes. Croc sees you helping many animals, defeating their evil forms and reverting them back to normal. You are the champion of the Gobbos, and yet you don't work with many animals to defeat Baron Dante. This small elephant bit is, again, an entirely self-contained mechanic that we won't see used anywhere else. This is also the first time we encounter a new kind of gem door reward. Race the Ghost. At the end of this path is a key and a caged gobbo. You need to get the key before the ghost, because if the ghost wins, it eats the key, and even if you die and retry, the key will still be gone. So if you do fail, you need to replay the entire level from the beginning. Now the ghost is faster than you, but the gems slow the ghost down. So you actually want to avoid collecting the gems to guarantee you win the race. Now this is a lovely subversion of expectations. The gems are set up to be easy to collect and lead us to the end, but we are trying to actively avoid them. Nice use of the gem mechanic. 3-2 Mud Pit Mania, another level which is very enjoyable. Thin platforms surrounded by deadly mud pits, low light, stretch platforms, hanging grates and precision jumps. Nice design all around. And then there's this random whirlwind which throws you away. I think you're meant to time running past it, but it grabs you and pulls you in even if you're quite far away. Again, it's a hitbox issue. Optional paths in the dark, flying enemies ready to knock you out the air into deadly mud, risky jumps into potential death, slowly creeping around to see the faint glimmer of a platform. This is an undeniably fun level. And then we even expand the underwater potential, adding in timed electric gates and enemies which shoot projectiles, and you have to dodge with a well-timed underwater dash. This is much better. We're now using the unique underwater control scheme to provide a gaming experience the player cannot have above water. Timed dodges. Above ground, another mechanic. A jar of fireflies provides a short duration of light, so you know when to jump. This level feels like they took a step back and said, right, I know what we're doing, but why are we doing it? What can we add to enhance? Instead of just being dark for the sake of being dark, let's use the darkness as a mechanic. Let's give the player control of when the light happens. The gem levels are still racing the ghost, but now you're racing in the dark. Progression of difficulty through stacking mechanics. Good design. The next few levels see the combination of mechanics continue. Now you are riding the omnidirectional platforms to jump on 4 timed buttons to open a door, and the ghost chase now includes the transport balloons. They really did start mixing things up here. Oh good, it's the required underwater boss. Wait for it to attack, swim in, tail whip it 3 times, done. The best thing about this boss is when you defeat it, the magical bird who comes to whisk you away is wearing an adorable little snorkel. World 3, stages 4, 5 and 6 are very similar. Longer sightlines across desert sections and a slow but consistent difficulty curve. However, I managed to find a secret teleport pad down below, which sends me to this bit, and this is one of the strangest parts of the game. A square monolith in the middle of a small arena, with a tube at the top of each side face, with water pouring out of it. and a single enemy strolling around the top. Now the water doesn't seem dangerous and the enemy can't attack me. None of this seems to have any mechanical impact. In fact, this is the only time we see bursts of water. I don't quite get what this bit is. This feels like an unfinished idea for a puzzle they just slapped into a secret area. I'd describe this whole collection of levels, the mid to late desert section, as the forgettable bit. You know when you play a game as a kid, you replay the first few levels again and again and again, and you memorize them, and if you struggle you find a cheat code and skip to the end and play those levels and memorize them, but these levels, the forgotten middle, this is the bit you just don't have any attachment to. I replayed the game for this video, and even I'm having trouble remembering exactly what happened in the desert. I remember sliding into mud pits a lot and some enemies shooting me off a hanging platform. And then I just about remember the desert boss, Cactus Jack.
Yeah, I don't think I got this far.
A large arena with a cactus spine machine gun, and then a whirlwind spin. Same tactics, wait for him to finish his attack, tail whip him 3 times, done. And now we're on to the penultimate world, Dante's Tower. 4-1 is a faster-paced journey around the outside of this evil tower. The general aesthetic is black, red trim, gold highlights, suede and deep oak. It's classy and stylized, stained glass windows in the empty black skybox. It's no doubt a visually striking level, and probably one of the most memorable parts of the game. Also, it comes with some of the strangest one-off mechanics, like needing to push this stack of metal boxes into a spiral ladder without any of them falling off each other, then jumping up the edges to get to the top of this building. Or perhaps my favourite bit of design in the entire game, this room. The giant cogs on the lower level need to have smaller connecting wheels added, and there are 4 to add, and you do this by climbing up to 4 question mark boxes via 4 different methods, stamping them, and dropping the connectors into the system below. Then when you get all 4, the whole floor begins to turn and you can jump to the floating platform to leave the level. This was a wonderful use of repetition and mechanics within a single room, all combining to create a greater puzzle. And then probably the creepiest part of Croc, we descend into the dungeon. Replaying this bit unlocked memories I had long forgotten, pushed into the recess of my mind. The dungeons in Croc are actually quite unnerving because of the unexpected enemy design. This shackled prisoner is guarding 3 buttons, and each button opens a door to a cell further in the dungeon, but the prisoner lunges at you if you get too close, and it's just generally a bit wrong. Then the guards themselves are holding giant scythes and spin around, not stopping, so you have to carefully jump past them. If you get too close, you die. Unlocking all 3 jail cells,
That's so crazy,
to the gem door and another chase level, this time running after an enemy holding a gobbo. I think they developed the chase mechanic and liked it so much they reskinned it 3 times. 4-2 has us back in Dante's Castle, complete with funky jazz soundtrack. The music really is one of the best things to come out of this game. I like how sometimes you just hear a distant laugh from Baron Dante. And talking about Baron Dante, the big enemy, let's just address the elephant in the room. Large, in-control reptile, big castles, small minions, staircases and luxury, family portraits and traps. This is basically Bowser's castle. Or at least it may have started as Bowser's castle. It's a little too on the nose. 4-3 sees this strange puzzle, and this is the only time it's used. You inflate this red balloon man, and when it explodes, if you've pushed it close to one of the doors to either side, the door blows open, meaning this is one of the only levels with choice. You have optional paths to get to the end goal. What is the only time this mechanic is used? Who is the balloon guy? Onto the tower mini-boss level. Now the approach to this boss gets us some nice new mechanics. Shrinking floor tiles. In fact, an entire staircase of shrinking floor tiles. Croc does have a bit of a habit of introducing a new mechanic and saying, right, here's a whole staircase of the stuff. The boss here is a little different. A donut-shaped room. They throw bombs at us, and you've got to make the bomb walk over a bounce pad to launch it back toward the boss. Now, I'd like to give this boss praise for being original, both with the room design and the method of attack. but again it's taking inspiration from the 2.5D platform puzzler Pandemonium, which released 1 year before Croc. In Pandemonium, all boss levels are donut-shaped, scrolling around the edge and flinging things toward the boss. So we launch 3 bombs at it and it's done. 4-4 Ballistic Meg's Fairway, we get a new enemy type. This speedy dude runs in a straight line and leaves a trail of fire behind them. And a new mechanic. Buttons can flip platforms, switching them from spiked to flat. And it's a shame this mechanic was saved until the last level, because there's a lot you could have done with this on previous worlds. So we're closing in on the final level. Here's my big issue with Croc. It's not a bad game. It's clearly looked at many other very successful platformers and taken inspiration from them. It's taken the ideas and the design elements, but I feel it's failed to understand why those games had those elements. Those games didn't make them as surface level choices, but Croc did. In the original games, they mattered either mechanically or to the lore or story of that game. Croc is using them, but not understanding them. Take the level select screen. You're flying around an island. This is taken from Crash Bandicoot. In Crash Bandicoot, however, the island remains consistent and you track your journey from seashore to the factory. And you see the dotted line leading to the next level. The adventure you go on is related to the dotted line. If it's vertical, it's a climbing level. When you reach the last level, you can track your journey all the way back to the start. It's the same in Super Mario World. In Croc, each world has its own island, and when you move from level 6 of one island to level 1 of the next, there's a black loading screen. So you have no way to relate one island to the other. You don't know how far you've travelled. It's the map of Crash Bandicoot without the meaning of the journey. In Tomb Raider, Lara Croft wears a backpack because you pick items up and use them. You can access the backpack as a game mechanic. It carries your medkits and keys. Croc wears a backpack because Lara Croft wears a backpack. You don't need it for any reason. It's a visual choice not related to a mechanic. In Rayman, Mr. Dark destroys the Great Protoon, which scatters the Electoons across the land because he was the thing holding them in harmony, and then he imprisons them so they can't fight back. And your act of saving them is essential because in the final fight, Mr. Dark takes away your ability to punch, and that is restored to you by the Electoons that you've been saving. In Croc, Baron Dante kidnaps the king and the Gobbos end up scattered around the world for no real reason. He hasn't captured them. Most of the Gobbos are just hanging out in various places and Croc finds them. Sonic is collecting the Chaos Emeralds because if he doesn't, Dr. Robotnik will collect them all and rule the world with an awesome power. Croc is collecting 5 coloured emeralds each level because there's a mechanic that will open a door. It feels like Croc has used all of the choices of other games but not understood why those games made those choices. It's borrowing the results without going through the process which makes the results meaningful. It's not a bad experience, but it does feel like quite an empty experience. 4-5, one of the strangest starts. The level begins on a falling block and then pirates drop down and you fight them off. Then as we push on, everything begins to move. Almost all of the floor sections now move, either up or down or left or right. I'm convinced this is the level the designers discovered how to make the floor move and they just went for it full send. This is actually pretty fun. And the secret gem door of this level leads to a brutal platforming section, shrinking floor blocks, but the next block only spawns when the one you're on is almost gone. Takes a bit of trial and error to memorize, but Croc is undoubtedly more engaging when it is being a bit more brutal. And now the hardest platforming level by far, an absolute spike in the difficulty curve, Panic at Platform Pete's Lair. This is actually a very well designed level, it's just unforgiving. We see this dude, we can assume this is Pete, hitting buttons with a hammer, and every hit the platforms in the level either flip from spikes to flat, or move up or down, or side to side, and we need to jump through every room to the end, matching the jump timings with Pete's button smashing. The difficulty? Well, Some rooms are more complex, with 3 buttons, and the platforms now move in all directions, and you need to know when to jump from one platform to the next and when to stand still, and the timing is razor thin. If you jump too early, you'll land on the spinning edge of the platform and get knocked off. If you jump too late, you'll be thrown off your platform, and you need to make it across several platforms in a row without failing. The gem door for this level is even more difficult. This is a seriously challenging platform section. If you were a kid, this is where you burned up all those lives you stockpiled in the first few worlds. Finally, we make it through and you can take on Dante, a 3-phase boss with each phase needing 3 hits. First, lure him to punch you and then tail whip in the recovery. Then he'll charge at you, but only while you're standing still. So stay still, beta charge, dodge out of the way, and then hit him after he's crashed into the wall. And the third and final phase, he will float into the air and blast lasers at you. Avoid all the lasers by running in a circle around him, and then tail whip after the blast's finished. He'll fire 3, then 5, then 7. It's not the greatest of fights, but eventually, after enough attacks, he goes down and we get a cutscene. Pretty standard stuff. Free the king, save the village, and get a statue put up in our honour, followed by some unskippable credits. But notice the environment in the background of the credits. A crystal room filled with 4 end-of-level gongs. We've never been there, and that's because that is the secret, hidden final level. At the end of the credits, it even tells us, now collect all the jigsaw pieces for the real ending. So let's do that. There are 8 hidden levels, 2 on each world, after the mini-boss and then after the world boss, and these levels are only accessible if you find all 6 gobbos on the previous 3 levels. So if you find all 6 gobbos on level 1, 2 and 3, then after the first mini-boss you'll unlock Secret 1. These hidden levels are longer and slightly more complex, but not that mechanically different. They're effectively a condensed version of that world's challenges, and each one ends with a jigsaw piece. And once you've collected all 8 jigsaw pieces, you'll unlock the 5th hidden world, the Crystal World. Now, Croc may be an amalgamation of ideas from other games, but one thing it can claim it inspired itself is the jigsaw pieces in Banjo-Kazooie, because Banjo-Kazooie released after Croc. I guess this is Croc's legacy, hidden jigsaw pieces in secret levels. The Crystal World only has 5 levels, and each level is a condensed, heightened version of an entire world. The first level is the grasslands, except with more fireball throwing enemies and more lava caves. The second is a more intense ice level, even with reused maps from various World 2 stages with added challenge. The third is a desert level with even less light, more enemies and almost unavoidable fire damage. And the final crystal level is styled after Dante's castle, but each room in the castle is a single mechanic taken to its extreme, shrinking blocks, dashing fire dudes, and flipping over spiked tiles. Make it through all the secret worlds, you'll unlock the 5th final secret boss. This is Crystal Dante. And I'm not quite sure what the story is here, or if this is just a purely mechanical challenge. Crystal Dante floats in the centre of a square room with 4 platforms spinning slowly around him, leading to 4 gongs on the outside. You need to ride the platforms and tail whip each gong multiple times in order to kill him, while also jumping over the laser blasts from Dante. The only attack he has, the laser blasts, are easily avoidable provided you are watching and listening. You can jump over the blasts no problem. Whip each gong enough and eventually you'll defeat Crystal Dante and be told, congratulations, you have 100% finished Croc. So Croc 1 Legend of the Gobbos took me about 6 hours while stopping to make notes. It's not a long game, but now we've finished it, we can ask, was it any good? Despite my nostalgia and childhood love for the game, I must be honest, it's a pretty standard platformer. And while it's going to be fun for newer players, more experienced gamers will realise it's extremely derivative of other better games. Croc feels like a greatest hits compilation of various mechanics and design choices, but doesn't always gel those choices together, either to each other or to its own character. The first island is a nice intro, Dante's Tower is a lovely experiment in taking mechanics to extremes, but the few middle islands are pretty forgettable. It's not a badly made game, but it's nothing you've not seen before, and you won't have any real reason to return. I feel Croc stands on the strengths of its emulation of other games of the genre instead of doing anything uniquely Croc, and while Croc 2 would release in 1999, that would also suffer from the curse of imitation, being compared unfavourably to
boys, we're starting the streaming. The
warped and Gex and
sleeping stream is starting now.
Kill an Afternoon essentially exists as a melting pot